Continuing to talk about this first place Arizona Cardinals team here, 9 weeks through the season, going into week 10. One more before their bye. Make sure you're subscribed to PHNX Sports here on YouTube. Of course, hit that like on this video. We continue to kind of take a look around the nation as far as maybe an outsider's perspective on how these Cardinals are looking to everybody else outside the market. We bring in Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus. He does some work there on the college side. Mondays, he's on with Trevor Sikkema, the PFF NFL show, their grade release show. And Dalton, what's the biggest surprise to you so far 9 weeks through the season on this Cardinals team?
I think it's just been the overall level of execution on offense, right? And we knew it would be better with Kyler Murray being healthy, right? And they started to look like this, in the second half of the season last year. But I think it's the improvement in the trenches and how dominant the run game is, right? And Drew Petzing likes to use a lot of multiple tight end sets as well. But they're walking on the field a lot of these weeks, and they're mauling people up front. It's not Kyler Murray and the spread out, kind of stuff he used to always do with Cliff Kingsbury, even before that at Oklahoma. They're lining up and they are physically beating teams down in the run game. I think like some of the other elite teams in the NFL right now, you look at Detroit and Baltimore, Philadelphia, a lot of the teams at the top right now are getting it done in the run game, and the Cardinals are no exception.
Yeah, I mean, just completely physically imposed themselves on the Bears over the weekend, 213 yards. We talked to Brian Baldinger on the show recently and said they ran like 3 plays. They were running like 3 plays over and over again, and the Bears couldn't stop them even with 3 linebackers on the field. But let's talk about that offensive line. I think a lot of people anticipated Paris Johnson Jr., 6th overall pick, top prospect in the 23 draft at the tackle position, to make a pretty easy transition to his natural spot, the left tackle spot. But the rest of this offensive line, from Yelda Froholt at the center spot to the other guys like Evan Brown, they don't get their flowers enough. Who stands out to you, especially when you start to look from a grade standpoint?
I think Brown is definitely one of those guys, especially when you talk about the run game. And I think, look, overall, he's got a 64.6 run block grade, which is just decent. But You can tell the weeks that their guards play well. I think especially, it was a loss, when Will Hernandez got hurt, but you got some other guys that have stepped in at that right guard spot too. But it's kind of the one thing that I see is when their interior offensive line plays well, those are the weeks where you really see the Cardinals having success and getting two-dimensional on offense, right? You mentioned Paris Johnson's really becoming the constant at left tackle that you want there. I think on the outside, they're pretty well set with those 2 guys, with Johnson and Beachum. But the interior, to me, is really the X factor. And I think Evan Brown is a good guy to mention against the Bears. He just absolutely mauled them on the inside. And especially when you talk about, again, it's not always the just zone read, light box kind of finesse running game with them. They put 2 tight ends on the field a lot, and they get downhill and maul people. And the weeks where their interior does that, they're going to have more really good weeks when they're rushing for 200, 250 yards. I think that's a great call out on Brown, because I think more so, again, there's been a few weeks where it's been some struggle, but he's been an X factor. When he plays well and when that interior plays well, the Cardinals offense looks really good.
Yeah, I think he made himself a lot of money this season. Didn't cash in this previous offseason, only $2 million on a 1-year deal. It's like you've got his performance, and then you've got the big money deals like Robert Hunt, and you look at the grades, you look at the performance, you look at, the offense, Panthers versus Cardinals, and I don't even think it's close. It's like the Panthers invested all that money, and it's like Brown is providing similar returns. You got to love it for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray, the quarterback, 80+ grade right now for the season. Where have you seen improvements for K1? He's 17 games into this new offense. He's in year 6 of his NFL career, but it feels like the infrastructure's there. What are you seeing from Kyler Murray now, 9 games into the 2024 season?
I think there's more. I think he's getting more comfortable with just the consistent play within the structure of this offense. It's a little bit different than what he's run in the past, right? With all these spread out attacks and everything was on him. And Arizona's still a pretty high read option team when they get in the shotgun. Why wouldn't you be when you have a Kyler Murray? But I think the weeks that he's played well, he's played really good complementary football, right? And it's not so reliant on taking deep shots down the field, right? Those will come available to you when you have them. But I think working in those intermediate windows, especially, I think Trey McBride is a huge X factor for the offense. I think as his production goes, the offense goes. And obviously, look, they could take shots with Marvin Harrison downfield, Michael Wilson downfield. But I think for Murray, it's really about embracing what kind of team this is, and then making the throws within structure. You're seeing, like last week, he only had 20 pass attempts. And honestly, against that Bears secondary, that's the right way to go about it. If you can run the ball on that team, you don't stop running the ball. So I think Murray, he just looks so much more comfortable playing complementary football, playing within the structure of the offense. And then you allow him to be Kyler Murray in moments, right? We've seen a couple of game-winning drives this year. You think about the San Francisco game, think about the Miami game. When it's time for Kyler Murray to be Kyler Murray, cool. But I think he's comfortable not having to do that every single drive.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to Marvin Harrison Jr. at his locker yesterday, and he pointed to, like, okay, you have the Miami performance, Kyler over 300. It was, I think the performance everybody's waiting for from MHJ, over 100 yards receiving. The big play on he's diving and it has to be reviewed. He's roasting Jalen Ramsey in the end zone, and then I think we'll loosely call him a victim of what they needed to do to just beat down the Bears. With the Bears, you just have to run and ground and pound that game. One last question about this offense. When you look at a guy like James Conner, he seems to continue to be an ascending player at 29 years old. It's an age that traditionally you see, running back production fall off a cliff. How do you kind of view James Conner going into a contract year and the performance he's had, not only this season, but last season for the Cardinals?
He just never seems to wear down, right? And I think this is an offense especially that fits him so well as such a downhill type of scheme, right? They run so much duo. Again, the multiple tight ends, they just want to overpower teams, whereas James Conner's he's not one of those outside zone runners, right? Like, I don't think he would be a guy who's a fit in a Kyle Shanahan type of offense, but he gets downhill and he gets positive yardage. And I think what you're seeing from a lot of the best offenses in football this year is they just don't go backwards, right? And James Conner, 4.5 yards a carry is solid. Is it the best in the league? Is it Derrick Henry? Maybe not, but that's definitely solid. And it's consistently 4.5 yards a carry. Is he the fastest guy in the league? No, he's not, but he's broken 47 tackles this year. He's got over 500 yards after contact. He's just a guy who gets you positive yardage. And in an offense like this, and we're seeing this in Kansas City, we're seeing it in Washington, we're seeing it in Baltimore, Arizona, when they have this run game rolling and James Conner rolling, they just don't go backwards, right? There's always positive plays. They're at the very least, they're in 2nd and 6, right? And I think there's some offenses who have forgotten the value of that, right? And a lot of the teams that are running the football, especially on first down, including them, and James Conner is the perfect guy to do that. Look, if I need 4 or 5 yards, James Conner is one of a handful of guys I'm going to pick to do that. He may not get me 50, but he's going to get me 4, 5, 6 yards at almost every single clip.
Yeah, I mean, Amari Dermicado can get you 50. My God, 53 yards at the end of the half. Huge play to kind of put that game in hand before going to the locker room. Before we get to kind of the division outlook here, it's pretty cluttered at the top, but the Cardinals are standing alone. I want to talk about this defense, kind of an unknown group, not a lot of expectations, a group that came out of the gates really slow. They were at the bottom of the league in most major statistical categories. Nobody was grading out very well outside of Garrett Williams. When you look at this defense now that has held opposing offenses out of the end zone at home in back-to-back games, it's shut out a Detroit Lions offense in the second half of a game. It shut out a Niners offense in the second half of a game. How do you view this Cardinals defense, and what's the strength of it?
I think for me, it's a very young group, and statistically they won't wow you, but I think what they're doing a better job of this year is just not giving up as many explosive plays, right? Like, if teams are going to go and score on the Cardinals, they're going to work for it, right? They don't have a ton of star power. So if you have a defense like that's maybe a little bit less talented than some of the better units, you just have to not give up big plays, right? Like, I think you saw one of the things you saw last week against the Bears, and the Bears have been struggling with it anyway, is look, just don't give Caleb any free shots down the field. Make him, complete 8, 9, 10 passes in a row, or make them run the football to beat you. And if that's what they do, that's what they do. Even that Lions game you mentioned in the first half, they had to use a lot of trick plays and stuff even to get the 20 points that they did. So I think they're playing a little more in sync. I like what I'm seeing on the defensive line a little bit better. When Dennis Gardeck was healthy, he was playing really well. Guys like Jesse Luketa, Zaven Collins is having a good year. I think it is slowly getting better. Is it an overwhelming unit? No, but I think if they can continue to just not allow explosive plays and then just let their offense work, right? Like, okay, against the Dolphins, 27 points, but you didn't see a whole lot of bombs in that game. I didn't think. You saw a lot of underneath, the way Tua likes to throw, and the Dolphins did run the ball well. So it's a defense really with the way their offense is playing. They just have to keep them in the game. I think they're doing a good job of that.
I guess locally, it was a bit of a polarizing subject, the trade deadline, because Cardinals fans saw this team out of nowhere, maybe ahead of schedule in their rebuild, like firmly in the playoff chase, firmly in the hunt for the division. And they see their general manager go out there and bring in a pass rusher, a huge need of this team without any sacks. And then a guy like, Azeez Ojulari for the Giants, who seemed like he was attainable, but at the end of the day, never ended up moving anywhere, still on the Giants with 6 sacks. What do you make of the move, 6th-round pick for Baron Browning coming over from the Denver Broncos, and how could he potentially help this Cards defense?
Well, this is a talented young player who had a good year last year, right? He might not have any sacks this year. Last year, had a 74.7 pass rush grade, which is a solid number. Honestly, it's above average number when you're talking about that. And 35 pressures. He was pretty good in run defense, too. And this year, just kind of got off to a slow start. I believe he had some injuries that he missed a few weeks with. And then the Broncos kind of started working him out of the rotation. They drafted some edge rushers. They got some other young guys that they wanted to get in there. So they felt like he was an expendable piece. But I think this is a good pickup. When you talk about a guy who's not even 26 years old yet. He's had a couple of productive seasons behind him. This year has been a little bit different, but a change of scenery, I think, could do him a lot of good. And it's a spot, in that front seven, the Cardinals are going to continue to work on it in the offseason. But I think to get a solid young player in the middle of the season like this, it fits right in, and he should be able to produce for them.
Yeah, and hopefully at some point they'll get 27th overall pick Darius Robinson back from a calf injury. But it looks like that's going to have to be after the bye week, the very earliest. Let's before I get to the division thing, everybody probably wants to hear your thoughts on. They do have a game before they're going on bye. They have a very real potential to reach 6-4, but 3-6 Jets coming off probably their best performance of the season on Thursday Night Football against the Texans. Cardinals, what do they need to do to take care of Aaron Rodgers and crew?
Defensively, I think it's what we just talked about is just don't give up those big plays, because most of the big plays coming for the Jets right now are just coming really on go balls from Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. Now, the Cardinals, they're not really a heavy man-to-man team, and there was times where the Texans went into that because they got a good group of corners. I get it, but Adams and Wilson can beat you one-on-one, and the Jets are trying to find one-on-one matchups. So I think that's really the big thing. As long as you don't give up those explosives, and then you got to be able to tackle Breece Hall because he can hit a home run any play. I think on the other side of the ball, I think this is the part where I'd feel good about it if I'm a Cardinals fan. Everything the Cardinals do on offense, I think works to their advantage against specifically the Jets. They can, just like last week, I think they should be able to run the ball on the Jets just like they did with the Bears, because normally, like, the Bears wouldn't respond to those extra tight ends with more defensive linemen. They would just leave 4 guys down there, and the Cardinals would throw double teams at them, and they had no answer. The Jets kind of do the same thing. They very rarely get out of their 4-man front. So I think the run game is going to be a big factor, and traditionally the Jets struggle to cover tight ends. I think Trey McBride's in for a big day.
Love to see it. We're all McBridesmaids each and every Sunday watching the third-year tight end just make play after play. He's hurdling guys. He's doing jet sweeps on the goal line. Very exciting player, and he grades out well with you guys over at PFF. Okay, final question for you, Dalton Wasserman. Make sure you check out his work, Pro Football Focus. We're there with our guy Max Chadwick doing the college football show with Trevor Sikkema, big friend of the program, doing the grading show on Mondays. Ready to write up NFL.com. They did their predictions, and they're picking the NFC West, and they're saying that the Niners are going to get it done. And then the write-up, points out, despite the Cardinals currently being in first place, head-to-head against the Rams and the Niners, they're 2-0. And then the Cardinals, after a gauntlet of a start to the season where they faced the likes of the Bills, the Lions, the Commanders, their strength of schedule is the league's third easiest at 420. But then they're like, the Niners are going to win this. What's your path for the Cardinals to win the NFC West, to hold on for dear life? Because you can't deny that the Niners and Rams are trending in the right direction, but the Cardinals have won 3 straight.
I think when you look at the rest of their schedule, those head-to-heads are going to come into play, but I think you set it up with winning games that you're supposed to win. I think, I know they're underdogs in Vegas. I think it's a good matchup for them playing the Jets. I think they should beat the Jets. You look at a New England game on the schedule, you look at a Carolina game on the schedule, you get there and you're already at 8 wins, and then you're talking about, okay, now you get teams that's going to matter for playoff positioning, right? The Seahawks twice, the Vikings, the Rams, the Niners. I think those head-to-heads are going to be very important, but I think winning the games that they're supposed to win, right, over the Jets, the Patriots, and the Panthers, that helps a lot. Because then in those other games, I have to assume if you get to 10-7, you should at least get a wild card spot at the very least, right? And I think the way Arizona's running the ball, I think they have something of an advantage there against Seattle, because Seattle's run defense can be very shaky and things can kind of come and go for their offense. So the head-to-heads are going to be a lot of fun, but if they take care of business in the games that they should win, you're talking about them already being at 8 wins. I think you get an inside track at least to a playoff spot, and then the head-to-heads kind of shake themselves out.
Incredible insight. Follow him on Twitter at PFF_Dalton. And of course, check him out, profootballfocus.com. PFF doing great work over there. Dalton, always great to catch up with you, my man. Thank you so much for your time. For sure. Appreciate you having me on. And make sure you subscribe to PHNX Sports here on YouTube. Drop a like on this video.
We all silly like the mayor.